Hey, this is Pixel. Today I'm taking a look at a game called Dandy Ace. This is a roguelite game, much like Dead Cells or Hades or Rogue Legacy, and it's a fairly good roguelite game. I understand that it takes a number of mechanics and gameplay styles from those previous games, but that's just what games do. They tend to borrow stuff from their predecessors, see what works, put them together in interesting ways, and then hopefully make a good game themselves. And I think that's exactly what's been done here. Dandy Ace so far is only out in a preview build. They've sent it out to reviewers and streamers. I've picked up a copy. You can play the first world right now, but I have to say, it's an amazing game. They have so well defined the different weapons and the different enemies and the different upgrade systems. Everything just feels really smooth. In the beginning, the game was fairly difficult, but as I learned the intricacies of every enemy and every weapon and all the different little upgrades that happen in the weapons, I found that my ability within the game was really what had me seeing more success, as opposed to upgrades. However, being a roguelite game, there are upgrades in this game that allow you to get better weapons faster, that allow you to get different weapons that are more useful, and those upgrades are available to players that don't see the same success by learning the mechanics of the game. That doesn't mean that I'm super positive about everything I ran into with Dandy Ace. For instance, the overall aesthetic for me is just so-so. Most of the other roguelite games that I've played that I've really enjoyed always have something unique about their aesthetic and their approach. Here I found the sprite design and the graphics overall to just be good and not necessarily great like some of the other top tier roguelite games. Additionally, the story, which is pretty paper thin, is just about a magician that is overrun by a new up-and-coming magician and overshadowed, and he traps that up-and-coming magician, who's named Dandy Ace, in this kind of parallel dimension mirror world, where he has to run through these procedurally generated worlds and destroy all the enemies in there to get to the end boss, which I would imagine is this green magician that has trapped him there. Like many other roguelites, it's a paper-thin story that just gets you playing the game over and over. It's not a story for anything to really be, at least on the surface, uncovered as you go through the game. So the story itself is merely passable, but I also found the subject matter of being a magician and kind of how the graphics worked with that subject matter to be not great, but again, good. I really like magic being the driving force in the game, where you're throwing cards and there's all these explosions, and that's a really cool theme to be on, but I think the execution overall, at least for me, was not breathtaking and could have been better. As far as criticisms go, though, that's it for this game. I really can't criticize any of the internal workings of the gameplay or the systems. Everything just felt great. Particularly awesome is the weapons system. Now you're able to assign 4 different cards to 4 different buttons, preferably on your controller. This is a controller-based game for the most part. But then you get 4 additional cards. And the way that this works is every single card has its attack or main activity that it does. Blue cards do dash, pink cards are your primary attack, and yellow cards do kind of an effect or an add-on attack. They do miscellaneous things. Every single one of these cards also has an upgrade that it can be attached to other cards. For instance, there's a dash that when you use it as an upgrade for one of your attacks, makes you have a haste ability for a few seconds and you just run a little bit faster. That one's not so awesome, but when you add, say, toxicity, which is a toxic poison burst, you add that to another card and it poisons enemies that you attack. So all of the cards have this dual function, and when you start to mix and match your different cards and you find out what really works, it's very empowering, and it allows you to really mix up the different approach on all these different enemies and different bosses, and it feels very solid as a gameplay mechanic. But what about upgrade paths? Because upgrade paths are very important for a roguelite game. Well, there's 2 primary ways that you can upgrade your character permanently. The first one happens between every single level. Now, in your levels, as you're fighting enemies, you're going to get blueprints, which allows you to unlock new weapons. As long as you beat that level, when you finish it, you end up at this Nexus area where there's a couple NPCs that you can talk to. One of them takes your blueprints and allows you to start spending gems that you're acquiring throughout the level towards that blueprint, and allows you to unlock new cards that you can use for your character. You can also unlock a myriad of other items in there, one of them being trinkets, which is the secondary NPC in that same Nexus area. Those trinkets will allow you to have a modifier connected to your character, where you'll either have a offensive attack, a defensive attack, or a miscellaneous ability that makes your character better. Overall, this implementation, if you've played Dead Cells, is very, very much like Dead Cells. It's got its own spin as far as being magician-based and magic-based, but it feels a lot like Dead Cells, and I think that borrowing of a gameplay mechanic in this particular situation worked really well. One more gameplay mechanic that should probably be mentioned is the keys in the game. Now, when you first start out, you'll have no keys at all, and keys once acquired are permanent. But that makes it so you can only have one path to go through the game, and you can only meet one boss. However, as you play through, the first key you'll receive is the red key. That'll allow you in subsequent runs to unlock the red gates as you see them and allow you to take different paths through the game. This will lead you to different bosses. So far in the game, they haven't implemented the blue or the green keys because this is, again, only the streamer and demo version of the game. This is the preview version that they've given out to reviewers. There's only the red key here, but in the future there will be more branching paths, and it'll look a lot, again, like Dead Cells in that way, and you'll be able to see different worlds and different bosses through that. So who's this game for, and should you buy it? If you like roguelite games, this is a second-tier roguelite game. It's not as good as Dead Cells, it's not as good as Hades, and the reason that it's not quite as good as those games is because it really didn't do anything different. This one borrows heavily from its predecessors, from games that got it right, and it puts together a recipe that also works very, very well. But it hasn't added anything to the conversation on its own, and because of that, it doesn't really belong in that top tier of roguelite games. So I think if you like roguelite games though, and you've played those top tier games, play this one. It's definitely worth your money. Whatever the cost comes out, probably somewhere around $20, it's worth that price, I think. This one's going to be worth that. The trick though is that I don't know the release date, I don't know the price of this upcoming game. I've been digging for information on it. I'm not sure when exactly it's going to come out, but I think it's going to be out sometime in February. If you're watching this game and it's about to come out, at least you know my feelings on it. Hopefully I get more information in the future. If I do, I will put that in the description of this video. So make sure to check that out because there may be all kinds of new information there. If you liked this video, well then like this video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, take a look at my other reviews, and if you like what I have to offer, consider subscribing. Thanks for hanging out with me, and until next time, this has been Pixel.